Now, what exactly did I mean with the title of this video? The road to the Super Bowl is unclear. What does that actually even mean? Usually every single year we look at one or two teams in the AFC and one or two teams in the NFC that the playoffs run through. Those are the teams that are going to be playing at home for a majority of it, and those are the teams that really look like they're the teams to beat. But right now, it looks like every week the team to beat in the NFL changes. You could argue that it's been the Chiefs for the whole year. You could argue that it's been the Lions or even the Vikings for the whole year. You could obviously make the argument that it was either the Bills or Eagles. You can make the argument for the Steelers or Ravens at certain points of this year. But as of right now, every team that I just named, along with maybe one or two other teams, are the real Super Bowl contenders. Yeah, the Commanders are probably going to make the playoffs. The Broncos might. The Texans are going to be in the playoffs. But are these teams truly contenders? In my opinion, as of right now, not really. But as for those teams at the very, very top, the best teams in the NFL that have proved themselves throughout this whole year, who's the Super Bowl favorite and why is it so unclear who the favorite is? You could say the Chiefs because they're 14-1 and have the best record. But you could also refute that by saying they have one of the worst point differentials for a team this good we've ever seen. And if they have to get into a shootout with a team like the Ravens or the Bills in the AFC, it might be rough for them. You could also make an argument for the Lions, but right now that team is so banged up defensively that it's going to be tough for them to keep up with really good teams as well. You can make an argument for the Vikings. They're one of the most complete teams in the NFL with two elite separators at wide receiver and a really, really solid defense. But this team with this core specifically has never really had that type of playoff experience. And you can make the argument that Sam Darnold himself could hold this team back in the playoffs. Of course, there's always the argument to be made for the Josh Allen-led Bills, but that team defensively is almost as banged up as the Lions as well. And you can make the argument that because they don't have as many great receivers, Josh Allen's going to have to put that cape on. And if he's not able to do that in 1 out of 3 or 4 playoff games, they're eliminated. And there's a high likelihood that that happens. The last team I think you can make a really, really good argument for is the Eagles. But right now, that team is banged up as well. And they look a little one-dimensional offensively. Yes, without Jalen Hurts, of course that limits their ability to pass. But if Saquon's not having a good game, it's going to be rough for the Eagles because passing the ball, even with Jalen Hurts, hasn't been the most successful for them. The rest of the teams, I think the Packers are very, very good. I think the Ravens and Steelers are good as well. Steelers, 2 straight losses, potentially a 3rd straight if they lose this week against Kansas City. But I think you can make an argument for that team being good because of how good their defense is. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson, you never know. They can always be good. And then the Packers, I think they have a very, very solid mix of being able to run the ball and throw the ball. But them, as well as the Bills, there's no superstar wide receiver that they have that Jordan Love can just go to bail him out. And we can still make the argument that Jordan Love isn't experienced enough in the NFL in terms of leading teams to playoff success. But there it is. Every single contending team in the NFL has its own weaknesses. And what if some of these teams matched up in the playoffs? How would that look? If the Chiefs played against the Bills, would the Chiefs be able to keep up with the Bills' elite offense? I don't know. But if the Bills had to play a team like the Steelers, would they be able to score against a great defense and a team that's able to run the ball on offense? I'm not sure. But at the same time, if a team like the Chiefs played the Steelers, I would pick the Chiefs because that team is going to be able to keep up as long as they don't have to score 30-plus points. I have the Chiefs winning against just about anybody. So it's also a game of matchups here in the AFC especially. But as for the NFC, Lions-Vikings, they play again in Week 18. That's probably going to show us a lot. But if those two teams play, are the Vikings going to be able to keep up with the Lions? And are the Lions going to be able to adjust to the blitzes that the Vikings have? Or if the Lions have to play the Eagles, are the Lions going to be able to run the ball better than the Eagles, who are almost as good, if not a better rushing attack than the Lions? And without David Montgomery, who knows what's in store for this team in the playoffs and how much of the weight is going to have to be on Jared Goff. It's just an interesting concept going on in the NFL right now where I still do not think there's one team that's just so much better than the rest of the teams in the league. There's no favorite in either conference. It's really going to be about the matchups. That's why these final 2 weeks are going to be so incredibly important. The teams that get the 1 seed, get the first round bye, and don't have to play as good of a team in the second round, those are the teams that might have a shot at getting into the Super Bowl. And once you get to the Super Bowl, it's anybody's game. But as for teams like the Eagles and Bills, who are two of the top 3 to 4 teams in the league, how are they going to survive some of these really difficult matchups? And are they going to be able to come through when it matters, when they're not even at their own home turf? Maybe we're overcomplicating this, and the AFC might just come down to Chiefs versus Bills, and the NFC might just be Lions versus Eagles. But even in those cases, who knows which team wins? The matchups are everything, and right now it's hard to tell because we haven't seen a lot of matchups between a lot of these teams so far. Yes, we've seen Chiefs versus Bills. We're going to see Lions versus Vikings for a second time. But you never know, man. And that's what's so interesting about the playoffs in the NFL. It's obviously a one-game shootout, and whichever team wins moves on. And that's what makes the NFL so interesting in the playoffs. And I think this year, the concept of the Super Bowl being so difficult to win is once again magnified because of how many elite teams there are, even though these teams all have their own weaknesses. The league looks really top-heavy right now, and there's a lot of elite teams, as well as some good young teams that look interesting as well, that are also going to sneak their way into the playoffs. We'll see if those teams also are able to give these contenders, these real contenders, a run for their money. I didn't even consider that as a factor, but you never know, man. In the NFL, anything's possible. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. But that's going to do it for me. I'll see you all in the next one.